Right, so this second question then on magistrates is looking at the selection and training. So it is an 18-mark question wanting to know how magistrates are selected and what sort of training they undertake. Okay, now as you go through it, you'll realise it spells QQSAT. So qualifications, qualities, selection, appointment and training. All of those 5 areas are needed to get your full 18 marks. Okay, so you're describing to the examiner how we actually have magistrates in England and Wales and what sort of training they undertake before they start the role. Okay, though, so starting off with qualification. So people that are suitable to be magistrates and people that are unsuitable. So you don't need legal qualifications, but what you do need is to satisfy these 3 here. Okay, so you need to be between 18 and 65. You need to live or work locally for at least a year. So locally, within your local area, generally 10 miles or less, really, for at least a year. The idea is that means then you'll know your local area. So when you're making your decisions, you have sort of a bit more knowledge. And finally, you can commit to between 26 and 70 half days per year. Magistrates only tend to work half days, so you'll do between 26 and 70. So there are your 3 qualifications. In terms of age, this is quite important because technically you could train to be a magistrate at 18, but because they want you to have quite a lot of life experience, really it's very rare for anybody under mid-20s to be able to be a magistrate, really. But the actual qualifications are between 18 and 65. As it says there, you can serve till you're 70, but when you are appointed, the oldest you can be is 65. Right, moving on to unsuitable then. So there'll be a variety of people that are unsuitable for the role as a magistrate. First of all, I think your obvious one is anybody with criminal convictions. So anyone who's had a previous conviction will be deemed unsuitable for the job role, so they won't be able to apply. Similarly, anybody that's been declared bankrupt, because you're deciding how much in terms of fines you're going to give somebody, we don't like you to obviously have issues with money yourself. So if you've had to declare yourself bankrupt, which means you physically don't have a single penny, we're not going to want you to decide the fate of any other offenders. There'll also be people that are already in some form of professional role to do with our criminal justice system. So a couple of other examples you could use, traffic wardens, police officers. Really, because they're already within the system, it'd be slightly controversial to allow them to be a magistrate, because then you're having your police officer charging you with the offence and then actually the same police officer being a magistrate deciding it, and we can't have that. We can't give them that much power. So anybody already within the profession would be unsuitable to be a magistrate. Obviously, anybody with any severe disabilities as well, deafness, blindness, the issue is there. You're going to have to speak to the defendant, see the defendant, look at the evidence. You need to be able to have your senses, really. So unfortunately, if you have got some form of disability with that, then you will be required to not apply to be a magistrate. Obviously, if it's just like a slight hearing, probably got a hearing aid, that's fine. But we're talking about severe disability, completely blind and completely deaf. You'd probably be unsuitable because of that. So that's your first cue then. Second cue then, looking at qualities. Well, the Lord Chancellor, he established 6 key qualities that he thought were really important when deciding whether magistrates will be accepted or not, or potential magistrates will be accepted. Okay, so it says here that it's established 6 key qualities for you to follow. Right, so starting off with the qualities then. So the first quality that the Lord Chancellor thinks that potential magistrates need to have is they need to have a good character. Right, so you need to be very trustworthy, you need to be a nice person. We need to make sure that you have got a good character in order to be able to satisfy that criteria. Second criteria that you need to meet then is you need to have good communication skills and a good understanding. So second one, fulfilling, understanding and good communication. So you need to understand your job role, what you need to be doing, understanding society as well. You need to be able to communicate effectively because you are communicating with defendants, potential legal teams if they do decide to have a solicitor. You'll be communicating with the court clerk, and obviously you're working as part of a team, so you need to be able to do that as well. Okay, so understanding communication. Third quality that you need to have then is social awareness. So you need to be aware of what's going on in society because you're going to have to sentence using your local knowledge. So if you don't know what's going on in Pontefract, you're not going to be able to sentence appropriately. And your job is to make sure you are sentencing as fairly and appropriately as possible. Fourth key quality then, you need to have sound judgment. Sound judgment. So basically all this is meaning that the judgments that you are giving are correct and that they are to the best of your ability, using the advice from the clerk and in terms of what society would allow to happen. Fifth key quality then is commitment and reliability. So you need to be committed to your job role, and you also need to be a reliable person. We need to make sure that you are turning up for your court dates. Bear in mind you are only working half a day at a time. There's no sort of excuse that you won't be coming up with, that you won't have good reliability. And then the final key quality, maturity and sound temperament. So obviously you have got to be mature because you are doing a very important job role. What you decide depends on somebody's liberty potentially if you are sentencing them to prison. So you've got to be mature about your job and sound temperament. So you can't be snappy. You've got to have the good communication skills backing that up again. The sort of person you are, you do need to be approachable for people to be able to come and discuss things with you. So if you haven't got that, if your temperament isn't good, then obviously we have got a concern there as a result. Now, in the exam, you don't need to remember all 6 of these. You just need to explain 3 of them. So go through 3 in depth and explain those key qualities. So people tend to choose good character, social awareness and understanding communication. But to be fair, it doesn't matter which of the 6 you choose, as long as you are comfortable explaining what they actually mean. Okay? Right, so selection process then. You apply to the local advisory committee, and this is a committee that's made up of magistrates and non-magistrates. So some of them will be practicing magistrates currently, some of them will just be normal individuals. Now, how you apply for them, they tend to be in newspapers, on the internet. They've even started putting them in magazines now, sort of like your soap magazines, just because they're trying to get a cross-representation of society. So they're trying to hit everybody, not just people that read newspapers or surf certain sites on the internet, making sure that we are representing society. And you end up with what we call a 2-stage interview. So when you apply, they select a cross-representation of society, making sure there's different people, and you go for 2 interviews, which is probably quite a lot to say it's a free job. You don't get paid to be a magistrate, but we want to make sure that the people that are deciding cases and that are meant to be providing justice do so. So first of all then, your first interview tries to find out whether you do have the 6 key qualities. So they will literally use it as a checklist. Have you got a good character? Do you show some commitment? Are you communicating very well? Are your judgments meant to be what they are meant to be? So we'll make sure you've got the 6 key qualities. But also what's quite interesting, anything that's quite popular, they'll have a look and see what you think about those crimes. So drink driving is obviously quite a popular crime. Probably about the 90,000 drink driving offences committed last year, and that's only those that have been caught. We'll see what your opinion is, and the same with youth crime, because if you have a set viewpoint and we're not going to be able to change that, we're not going to be able to make you completely unbiased. The problem we've got there then is that you will be biased when you make your decisions, and that's not something that we should really be accepting. So we'll see what you feel about particular crimes that are quite popular. And then also the second interview, if you want to fill in then, you're given case examples so that you can apply any knowledge and you can be a judge in that sense. Now, don't get confused between judges and magistrates. A judge is a qualified person in court. They sit in Crown Court and above. A magistrate isn't qualified, he sits in the magistrate's court. You're sort of still doing the same job as a judge, sorry. But we just want to make sure that you can make those judicial decisions. Now, if you want to fill in, what it's known as is it's testing your judicial aptitude. So your ability to apply knowledge to that case scenario before you come up with your outcome. Okay, so we've done qualifications, qualities, and then the selection process, QQS. If you turn over then, we're looking at past the two-stage interview, the local advisory committee recommend you. So your name gets passed to the Lord Chief Justice, and then ultimately it will be the Lord Chancellor who will appoint you. Okay, now they do select people from a variety of backgrounds. So if you just want to fill in here in your gaps, so we've got different races, different genders, different religions, more importantly, different backgrounds. We try to get different employment backgrounds. So you might have somebody that's a taxi driver, you might have a manager in a company, you might have somebody stacking shelves in Tesco, you might have the head teacher of a school. We're making sure that we've got a massive range of people in society to make sure that they're doing the job correctly, but that the fact that the panel of magistrates are representing society. At that point then you're officially sworn in at the Crown Court once appointed, so you basically take an oath that says that you will apply the law of the land correctly, so that you've got to take on any case that's put in front of you. So you can't turn down a case just because it's nothing to do with what you believe in, or let's say you're a devout Christian so you don't believe in divorce. Unfortunately you can't then turn around and say you don't want to deal with a divorce case within the family court. If you are trained for it, you've got to take on any case. Right, so that's you looked at qualifications, qualities, selection and appointments. So that's most of this question done. I'm going to do the training as a separate video just because I've got it as a separate document, but it will be classed as the same topic. So the training bit does actually get you quite a lot of marks. We're looking at almost half the marks are rewarded by going through the training process. So if you turn over in your booklets and I'll open up another video for training.